بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما. اللهم افتح علينا حكمتك وانشر علينا رحمتك يا ذا الجلال والإكرام. وصل اللهم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله الكرام ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله. So, Bismillah, this is the chapter concerning the Man yuqta'u lahu bil jinan. We went over that, and then the mu'adhans. So the وعمر أوس وبلال سعد زياد المؤذنون عدوا. So his mu'adhans were Amr bin Maktoum, and he was the blind man. The Prophet ﷺ, he's also the man mentioned in the Abasa wa Tawalla in that chapter in the Quran. And then Aus Abu Makhdura, Bilal ibn Abi Rabah, who was Ethiopian, most likely, possibly Nubian, freed slave. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu freed him, and he was the first one to give the adhan. He was the first mu'adhan in Islam. When the Prophet ﷺ died, he stopped giving the adhan, and he actually did not give the adhan until the time of Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu. When Umar came to Syria, and I mistakenly mentioned yesterday about Muawiyah. Muawiyah was actually governor of Syria during Umar's caliphate. So, but he was from the family of Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu anhu. When Muawiyah, when Umar radiallahu anhu came, he asked Bilal to give the adhan, and Bilal gave the adhan, and they say that everybody who remembered the time of the Prophet ﷺ, it's usually told in Medina, but the riwayah that I've seen, that I've heard it told that it was in Medina. When he visited Medina, he gave the, and that is possible. I've heard many people tell it that, but the riwayah that I've seen that is thabita is that it was when Umar went to Syria, because Bilal was living at that time. He's buried in Syria also. So he gave the adhan, and the Sahaba that heard it came out weeping because they were so moved by remembering the time when he would give the call for the prayer. And then Sa'ad ibn Aid, who was the Mawla of Ammar bin Yasir, he was another of the Mu'adhinun. And then Ziyad ibn al-Harth. So these were the Mu'adhinun, and the Prophet ﷺ said, أَطْوَلُ النَّاسُ أَعْنَاقًا يوم القيامة المؤذنون. The people that have the longest necks on the Day of Judgment are the people that give the adhan. Long neck, it was associated with sharaf for the Arabs. So, and then also the Prophet ﷺ in a riwayah said that they had the greatest reward. There's a khilaf about whether the mu'adhin is actually better than the imam, or vice versa. And many said that mu'adhin's reward is greater because the imam has to pray anyway. So the mu'adhin, though, is doing something extra. So it's a fard kifaya that he's fulfilling by calling people to the prayer. The Prophet ﷺ encouraged the adhan. In the Maliki madhab, the adhan is only called if you're calling others to prayer. But some of the later Malikis said that if you're in a place, because there's the hadith in which the Prophet ﷺ said that if a shepherd was out in the wilderness and he called the adhan, everything will testify for him on the Yawm al-Qiyamah, so that he calls the adhan. And so the later Malikis said that that was a good thing to get the reward of that hadith. And then he says, "Radwanu Rabbina alayhim turra man tara minha jahmun wa barra." So may our Lord's pleasure be upon them all who follow their path displaying righteousness. من ترى منهاجهم وبره. ذكر دوابه عليه أفضل صلاة ربي دائما وأكمل. This chapter concerns the Prophet ﷺ's animals, and I think it's important, it's interesting, many of the books of Seerah do talk about the Prophet's animals. One of the things about the Prophet is he is, because Allah says, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ, he's a mercy to all the worlds, including the animal kingdom. And so it's important to remember that the Prophet ﷺ was actually sent tashrifan, not taklifan, but tashrifan so the difference between the two, taklif is where he's sent and you're responsible for the message that he was sent for. Tashrif is as an honor. So he was sent to all the worlds as a mercy. So this is tashrif for the animals, for the earth itself. And the Prophet ﷺ spoke about the rights of all of these different things in the world, including animals. The Prophet ﷺ was very severe on people that he actually cursed. And an important thing to note about the Prophet's cursing, he said, "Ma bu'atu la'ana," I wasn't sent to curse. It's in the sigha mubalagha in Arabic, which is a hyperbolic form, that he was not somebody that cursed by nature, nor was he sent to do that. But he did, there are over 100 curses that the Prophet articulated. In al-Bukhari, he says that Allah replaces his curses as prayers. But the curse is ghayatul zajar. This is how the ulama interpret his curses. It's ghayatul zajar. When he curses, it doesn't necessarily mean, because if he curses something, that's finished. They're cursed. So when he curses which is equivalent to our word damn, in English. A damn is a very strong word. It's less so now, but once it was an extremely strong word in the English language, because you were essentially saying go to hell to a person to be damned to hell. Damnation is to be mal'un, to be cursed to hell. So the Prophet ﷺ did not curse as a habit, but there are times when he cursed. The ulama say this is ghayatul zajar, because if the curse was upon those people, then there would be no salvation for those people. So when he curses people that have tattoos, what it means, it's ghayatul zajar, which means it's the most extreme form of prohibition, that he's really saying this is something that people should not do, should stay away from it. So it's important to note that, because people will often forget that the people of kaba'ir have salvation. Just on the subject of tattoos. Tattoos, for some reason, have really spread in the West. Like in my lifetime, I'm amazed. Because when I was young, and some of you don't remember this, but people did not get tattoos. And women certainly did not get tattoos. But the men that got tattoos, there were two types of men: military people or criminals. And the military, it was a type of, and even then it was Navy and Marines. It wasn't Air Force or Army. It was, and they'd get the anchor or mom or whatever they got. But now you're getting it's become a norm, and it's actually, it's a muthla, it's something that the Prophet ﷺ did curse. He cursed women that got tattoos, women that gave tattoos, meaning that it was prohibited and they should not do it. The Bedouin did used to tattoo, but I mentioned this before, the tattooing of primitive people is not like the tattooing of modern people. It was symmetrical. It was balanced. They would have dots on both sides, lines. Like the Maori people is the extremist form, but now it's just a really sign of just gross imbalance in our culture. So if people come into Islam with tattoos, that's not their fault, and you shouldn't in any way tell people, oh, that's haram, once they become Muslim. I mean, there's not a whole lot they can do about it. People can get them removed, but it's expensive and it's difficult. But I know Muslims that converted to Islam after getting tattoos. But Muslims, certainly, I mean, this is a great crime against the body. And it's something the Jews also prohibit. So the Jews have prohibition of tattoos in the Talmud. And they know that it's a desecration of the body. Unfortunately, the Christians don't have that guidance, because a lot of the guidance that the Jews have was not incorporated into Christianity. They don't know about menstrual cycles like the Jews do, for instance. So people don't know to stay away from their wives during menstrual cycle. They don't know about ghusl, for instance. I mean, some people will do that just by fitrah, but they don't know it as an injunction, as a way of restoring your spiritual integrity. So there are many things, but the situation, the tattoos is a very, very unfortunate phenomenon that's spread, and we're going to see more and more Muslims with tattoos as you get converts and things like this. So ذكر دوابه عليه أفضل صلاة ربي دائما وأكمل له من الخير العتاق عشرة أو تسعة فيما حكاه المهرة. So the Prophet ﷺ had animals. He loved animals. His Abdul-Muttalib, I mentioned, was noted for feeding the wahush, because he lived in Mecca. Mecca is a place where there's really not any, so to speak, agriculture there. And so animals had a hard time foraging for their own food. So he actually used to go up in the mountains and feed the animals. Abdul Muttalib. So that's the Prophet ﷺ's grandfather. So they had an awareness of caring for animals. The Prophet ﷺ had a lot of shafaqah for animals. السلام عليكم دكتور محمد. لا عندي درس الآن أنا إن شاء الله أكلم دكتور عبد الله لأنه لازم أشوفكم إن شاء الله. جزاك الله خيرا. السلام عليكم. That was the head of the Quran factory. So you went. Yeah, he's a very nice man, and they've all been really good to us. We come, you guys got more gifts than normal. So they didn't give that many. They give you MP3, I think. It's very nice. So Jazakumullahu khairan. It's an extraordinary project. It really is amazing. And it's also Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inna nahnu nazzalna dhikra wa inna lahu lahafidhun. We sent down this reminder, and we have taken upon ourselves to guard it, to protect it. If that verse alone doesn't convince somebody of the proof of Islam, nothing will, because it is so clearly providential, the protection that the Quran has been given. No other religion has the protection of their sacred book that we have. The Jews debate upon the different versions of the Torah. The Christians debate upon the different versions of the Gospels. They have different endings to their Gospels in the different religious sects. The Buddhists have untold number of scripture. The Hindus also. All of these groups do not have unified scriptural integrity. The Muslims alone, Shia, Sunni, Ibadi, Sufi, Salafi, it doesn't matter what group you're from, everybody reads the same Quran with the same tashkil, the same harakat. There's almost no debate about makharij al-huruf, how the actual, which is the protection of the phonetics of the Quran is another miracle of the Quran. I studied New Testament Greek, and one of the things the teacher told us was that we don't know how the Greek sounded at that time because it just wasn't preserved. So even the reading, the recitation of the New Testament in Koine Greek, it's not real classical Greek. The Attic Greek, which is the Greek of Homer, Homeric Greek, is a higher Greek, and then the Platonic Greek. But the Koine Greek, which is the Greek of the New Testament, they don't even know how that was pronounced, some of the words and things. So the Quran is amazing. Phonetics, you don't get phonetics until the 18th century in Europe, where they start studying makharij al-huruf, all these different all these different makharij al-huruf came in the 18th, 19th century when the Europeans really discovered that. So even the Qa'idah, which is the book that most Ajam learn how to read the Quran from, the Qa'idah was developed by Muslims over 1,000 years ago, and now if you look in the 19th century, that's how they taught phonetic English, is the basic same thing. And you have to wonder where they got that, because they didn't have it 100 years ago, 200, 300 years ago. So the preservation of the Quran is just amazing. The 7 variants are amazing, that each variant has been preserved with the accuracy that it's been preserved. And the Hafidh, if he's a real Hafidh or she is a real Hafidh, the preservation that they can hear immediately when something is not right and correct it is stunning testimony to the preservation of the book. So it's a nice thing to be able to see that, to see how they've done that, and why the Quran is printed flawlessly, edition after edition, without mistakes in it, is just something really stunning about the religion. So alhamdulillah. So the Prophet ﷺ had many animals and treated them very, very well. He had 10 pedigreed horses. Al-Itaq is the horses that have this ancient lineage. Horses up until not that long ago, there were horses still that had the pedigree of Muawiyah's horses and in the Arab world. So the Arabs were very, very protective of the lineage of their horses. The Europeans do that now to a great degree. There's horses that have sold for over $60 million. So it's still just the most expensive creature on earth. I mean, really, it's amazing the honor that horses have been given. The Arabic word for horse, khayal, it's related to the word for imagination. It's related to the word for pride, khuyala. And so the horse was a source of Arabian pride. The Prophet ﷺ had beautiful horses. He was given horses by people. Tamim ad-Dari gave him a horse that he later gave to Umar radiallahu anhu. His first horse, some say he had 9. أولها السكب المحجر الأغر الطلق ذو السبق الذي له اشتهر. So the first was sakab, which means the downpour, insikab al-matar, and the idea of just a very fast horse. So he called it a sikbu. And then the one with the white ankles, al-muhajjal, ghurra al-muhajjalun, is how the Prophet describes his people on the Day of Judgment, because they asked him, how will you know your community? And he said he would know them because they were ghurr and muhajjalun. They had white forehead from the wudu, so their faces will have a lightness from the wudu. And wada'a in Arabic, I mentioned that earlier, illuminations. Wada'a is bright. And so wudu gives the face a type of brightness. And so the muhajjal is a horse that has the white on the feet. So when you see, or the hoofs rather, horses don't have feet. So it has the white. So he was called al-muhajjal. And then al-aghar is to have a white forelock. Al-muhajjal al-aghar. Al-talqu dhu sabqi. And so then the next was al-talq, which is swift or triumphant in race. And then أول ما غزا عليه المجتبى بأحد فرمز المهذبة. And then this was the first one that the Prophet ﷺ, At-Talq is the first one that he rode on in Uhud. And he said it was always well groomed. Wardu, which is the one that he gave, was given to him, and then he gave to Umar radiallahu anhu, which means the rose. It was a sweet smelling horse. And then the third was al-Murtajiz, which is, Murtajiz means the poet, and they say the Prophet named him that because when he neighed, the sahil, the Arabs call it, when he neighed, it had a rhythmic sound, like somebody reciting a irtijaz, Rajaz poetry. Lahu bihi khuzamatu hina juhid. The one whose purchase Khuzaymah came forward to testify for on the Prophet's behalf. And I mentioned the other day that Khuzaymah is the one that the Prophet ﷺ said was worth 2 testimonies, because there was a debate about the purchase of the horse, and Khuzaymah testified on behalf of the Prophet, and he was the only one there. And the Prophet ﷺ, they asked him why, and he said, I know the Prophet doesn't lie. So whether he saw the transaction or not, to him didn't matter. It was enough that the Prophet ﷺ said it for him to testify. The Prophet said, your testimony is worth 2. And he's the one that came with the last verse of the from لَقَدْ جَاءَكُمْ رَسُولٌ مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ عَزِيزٌ عَلَيْهِ مَا عَنِتُّمْ حَرِيصٌ عَلَيْكُمْ بِالْمُؤْمِنِينَ رَءُوفٌ رَحِيمٌ فإن تولوا فقل حسبي الله لا إله إلا هو عليه توكلت وهو رب العرش العظيم. Those verses at the end of Tawbah were the only verses that Zayd ibn Thabit could not find 2 people who had seen it written down in the presence of the Prophet ﷺ, and Khuzaymah had seen them written in the presence. And so Khuzaymah was the one that the Prophet said was worth 2 testimonies. So those verses are in the Quran on Khuzaymah's testimony. And then he says, وَالطَّرْفُ, the pedigreed, وَاللَّحِيفُ, the blanket, and then al-mulawih, the lanky, like he was very, very tall and skinny. So he was called al-mulawih. وَالضَّرْسُ, which is the bite, he used to bite. وَاللِّزَازِ, which is the tenacious, and ذَاكَ السَّابِحُ. So the وَالسَّابِحَةِ سَبْحًا in the Quran. The sabihat are the war horses that go riding. And then, so those are the horses, and then he had ثُمَّ الْبِغَارُ كُلُّهَا مَرْوِيَّةٌ. What's interesting is the fact that the names are kept is another example of how much we know about the Prophet ﷺ. I visited somebody in Jeddah, and they have stables, and over the thing was they had the names of the horses, and one was a sakbu. So the Arabs still name their horses after the horses of the Prophet ﷺ, tabarrukan. So, and then ثُمَّ الْبِغَارُ كُلُّهَا مَرْوِيَّةٌ فِضَّةٌ وَالدُّلْدُلُ الْأَيْلِيَّةُ. So then his mules, all of whom have been chronicled, Fidda, the silver, Duldul, the porcupine, Duldul, and Duldul was given to the Prophet ﷺ by Muqawqas from Egypt, and ثم حمار اسمه يعفور. Ya'fur, there's another Aifir also. Ya'fur, the Prophet ﷺ rode him, and Ya'fur loved the Prophet ﷺ. When the Prophet ﷺ died, Ya'fur actually threw himself into a well and died. And some of his animals stopped eating and died also when the Prophet died, ﷺ. But Ya'fur literally threw himself into a well. So it was just too much for him to. His purpose was to be the donkey of the best of creation. What after that would you want to live for if you were a donkey? وَالنَّاقَةُ الْقَصْوَى فَقَدْ مَأْثُورُ. and of his she-camels, al-Qaswa. And then there's also different names for Qaswa. Some say al-Adba, which is the camel that the Prophet ﷺ lam tasbiqha naqatun. No camel could ever outrace this camel. And then and the Sahaba were very happy about that. And then one day the al-Adba or al-Qaswa, some say it's the same camel, lost the race, and the Sahaba were very upset about that because the Prophet's camel lost. And the Prophet ﷺ said it was haqqun ala Allahi alla yartafi'a shay'un fi dunya illa an yadha'a. You know, that it's a right of God that nothing ever gets elevated in this world except that Allah will abase it. It's just the nature of the dunya. What goes up must come down. That's a qa'idah of the world. And so he was just letting them know that, you know, no matter how great a boxer is, Muhammad Ali, they're going to lose if they keep going. Every great racer will lose their ability to race. No matter how good anybody is in the dunya, the time will come when it's the nature of the world. That's the way Allah has written into the world. So, وَهِيَ الَّتِي أَمْتَطَ بِالْامْتِرَاءِ, but it's known for certain that she was the one our Prophet rode on the famous hijrah. And we know that Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, when the Prophet ﷺ came to say, أُذِنَ لِي, I've been given permission to make the hijrah, Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu said, As-sahba ya Rasulullah, am I the one to accompany you? And he said yes. And he said, I have 2 camels, one for you. And the Prophet said, I'll buy it from you. And he actually refused to take it as a gift. That is an indication of the Prophet ﷺ not using his position with his friends, which is very interesting. Because friends, when somebody really, really loves you, you can take advantage of that. And the Prophet ﷺ was the farthest of people from that. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. He did not ever use his position to exploit people for worldly gain or any other type of gain. وهي التي امتطى بالامتراء نبينا في الهجرة الغراء وكان لا يحمله إن نزل عليه وحي غيرها ونقل. So none could bear the weight. If he was on an animal and the wahi came, it couldn't stay up. It would literally go down, except for al-Qaswa. It was the only camel that could bear the weight of the wahi. سَنُلْقِي عَلَيْكَ قَوْلًا ثَقِيلًا. We're going to thrust upon you a weighty word. So the revelation was very weighty, it was very heavy, but al-Qaswa was able to bear the weight of the revelation when the Prophet ﷺ was there. أَنَّ إِسْمَهَا الْجَدْعَاءُ وَالْعَضْبَاءُ. So there, فَقَدْ تَرَادَفَتْ لَهَا الْأَسْمَاءُ. Her name was al-Jad'a as well as al-Adba. So you'll see al-Adba in that narration that she never lost a race until that one time. So in that narration is al-Adba. وَمِئَةٌ كَانَتْ لَهُ مِنَ الْغَنَمِ وَمَعَهَا 20 لَقْحَةً تُلَمْ. So he had around 100 sheep, and add to that about 20 camels. What's interesting also about the Prophet ﷺ is the connection to life. He was milking his own animals. I mean, we tend to forget how related they were just to natural life, to the natural life cycles. The animals were in and out the house. There were sheep in the courtyard. There's a famous story of, one of the reasons why the alcohol was prohibited was Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu had 2 camels that he was given for his walima, and Hamza had some alcohol and he was a little inebriated, and he came by and he was listening to a qain, somebody singing about his ancestors, and he got very, very just filled with a lot of pride, and he went out and he just cut off the 2 humps of these camels. And Sayyidina Ali was just like, he went out and he was like, because he was not a wealthy person. He saw these camels, he's like, There goes the walima. And the Prophet ﷺ tried to talk to him, but he said something that was, Prophet knew that he just wasn't in his right mind. So that was one of the reasons why that prohibition came down. So the camels were there. It was just really part of life. One of the things you see if you go to Cairo, you'll see literally carts with camels in the middle of this huge city. You don't really see that anymore in places. People don't see. I mean, New York, you still have police on horses and things. But this used to be just part of life for people. They become alienated. I think one of the positive things about Western society is the pet keeping, because it really teaches children to respect animals, to care for animals, to have emotions about animals. You often see a lot of animals mistreated in the Muslim world. I've seen cats mistreated. I've seen dogs mistreated. The kids throw rocks at dogs. Really unhealthy signs in a society when you have these types of things. So it's important to really inculcate in young people, and that's why knowing that the Prophet ﷺ not only had all these animals, but he also treated them with such respect. He gave them names, he gave them funny names, and he, names, really endearing names. And they loved him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the animal, there are many hadiths about the animals. The dab, which is a weak hadith, but it's a beautiful hadith. The dab who, the poet said, سلام على من قال للضب من أنا فقال أنت رسول الله أنت محمدي. The peace be upon the one who the lizard was asked by him, who are you? And he said, you are the Prophet of God, you are Muhammad. The gazelle also complained to the Prophet that was hunted. Somebody caught this gazelle, and she complained to the Prophet ﷺ that she still had a fawn. And so the Prophet asked the Bedouin man to release the gazelle so that it could go and finish milking. And that to me is an indication of, in America, for instance, there are laws during the mating season and after. You cannot hunt because there are does that are still milking their fawns, and if you hunt during that time, you're depriving an animal of its mother. So these are prophetic types of injunctions, really. Very important. I mean, we have major crises in a lot of places. In Mauritania, for instance, the gazelle population is almost gone. It's almost extinct because they don't have laws about, and now guns are widely, when it was bows and arrows, the gazelle had a chance. But in a world where you've got guns with high power, telescopes on them, and you can, shoot animals with ease, these animals really go extinct quickly. So all these things are important to remember, that the Prophet ﷺ was teaching animal conservation, was teaching animal rights. The Prophet said, لَعْنَ اللَّهُ مَنِ اتَّخَذَ حَيْوَانَ غَرَضًا. May Allah curse the one who takes an animal as an object of sport, like to shoot an animal just for fun. Hunting is makruh in Maliki madhab. It's makruh to go hunting unless it's out of need for food. Just as a sport, it's makruh to go as a sport to hunt. But if you hunt for a need for food. So the animals that he had also وَكَانَ يَخْتَصُ بِشُرْبِ شَاتِ تُدْعَى بِغَيْثَةٍ لَدَى الرُّوَاتِ. He also had a shad that he drank from for quite some time called Ghaitha. Ghaitha is the one that gives you succor or help in difficult times. وَدِيكُهُ الْأَبْيَضُ جَاءَ فِي الْخَبَرِ. He also had a white rooster, as has been related. وَلَمْ يَجِي فِيهِ اقْتِنَاؤُهُ الْبَقَرِ. But he was not known to have owned any cows, although he did sacrifice a cow on the Hajj. But he did not own cows. There's no hadith that indicates he ever ate beef. The Prophet ﷺ, there's no hadith. The Ibrahim ﷺ, the Quran indicates that he served veal as a meal. So he ata bi ijrin samin. He came with a well-nourished veal. So but the Prophet ﷺ did not. He said, "Luhumuha da'un wa albanuha shifa." The meat of cows produces sickness, but the milk is a cure. It's a healthful drink. So the Prophet indicated that red meat. Now, I mean, we know that the worst meat for health reasons is beef, and the Prophet ﷺ said, and that's a sahih hadith, it's considered ishkal amongst the ulama. But he said that لحومها داء وألبانها شفاء. The beef is a disease-producing food, but the milk is a healthful food. It's a shifa. And if you have people that have lost a lot of weight, milk is a very quick way of getting people back. Yogurt, all those type things are good as a shifa. But again, to have a lot of milk dairy products is not a good thing. The best of milks are the sheep milk. We know that. And also camel's milk, which are the two types of milk that the Prophet ﷺ drank. He also said, never curse a rooster. You know, some people, like in the morning, the rooster starts crowing. He said, never curse a rooster, because they're waking people up for prayer. So the rooster is a blessed animal, and the Prophet ﷺ did have one. He also there were cats in the house. There were also dogs in the early period. Aisha had a puppy dog. Jibril complained about it, and the Prophet ﷺ did not keep any dogs in the house after that. But there were dogs in Medina. The type of attitude that Muslims have towards dogs is completely unacceptable. The three Imams consider dogs to be najis, that they're unclean animals. Imam Malik was not of that opinion. His proof to me is a stronger proof. The hadith, إِذَا وَلَغَ كَلْبٌ فِي إِنَاءٍ فَاغْسِلُوهُ سَبْعًا. If a dog licks in a bowl, clean the bowl 7 times. Imam Malik said, had it been for najasa, he would not have mentioned a number. Because to remove najasa is just whatever it takes to remove it. But the fact that he mentioned sab'an, he said that it means it's ta'abbud, that the wisdom is not known to us why we're told to do that. But Malikis have never had a problem with the dogs. And seeing eye dogs, I mean, I know Muslims, there's Muslims in our community, there's who have seeing eye dogs, and when they come, it's like suddenly everybody becomes, which is not really appropriate for somebody who has a seeing eye dog. It's just not really a very nice thing to do to somebody, because dogs are very beneficial. They're also animals that are guard dogs. Ibn Abi Zayd al-Qayrawani, the great Maliki scholar, had a guard dog in his house, and some people kind of complained about it. He said if Malik was alive today, he'd have a lion in his yard. In other words, things aren't as safe as they used to be. So if you know a Muslim that has I had one of my teachers had a guard dog, and I saw with my own eyes, because I used to eat with him, and with my own eyes I saw this. He would take the couscous, put it in his left hand, and feed the dog while he was eating dinner. I saw it with my own eyes. You know, so, and I don't know anybody that has the wara' of that man. I've never seen anybody that has the wara', the scrupulousness of that man. Hafidhahullah. So dogs, just be nice to dogs. That's my message there. Don't. The kalb al-aqur, which the Prophet said to kill, is like a rabid dog, a voracious dog. But just the dogs that you see in the West, really don't. It's just people have dogs. They're dog people, and they need to become Muslim. They can become Malikis, They have redneck bumper sticker my wife definitely, my dog maybe, my gun never. Right? Yeah. So, and then the cats, somebody mentioned yesterday that the Prophet had a cat with a name. I don't know that. I tried to find that, but I could not find that. But we know the Prophet liked cats. He called them tawafat, things that live around the house. Cats are very good. They kill harmful animals, rats that carry diseases, snakes, and they're special creatures. I mean, they're amazing creatures. You can learn a lot from watching cats. So there were cats in the Prophet's house. Some in the Shafi'i madhab, they have more scrupulousness about cat hairs and praying with cat hairs, things like that. So generally, the hairs of the animals should be avoided as much as possible. If you do have pets, to pray with a rug that doesn't have the hairs on them. Now this section is concerning weapons. سلاحه بيان ما له من السلاح يصلى عليه واهب الفلاح له من الأسياف 9 فقط أسماؤها مروية عن من فرط منها الذي أصابه من بدري وكان يدعى ذا الفقار فدري ومثله القلعي والبتار والحتف قد جاءت به الأخبار كذلك المخذم والقضيب والعضب والرسوب واليالبيب وكان عندهم من الرماح 4 تعد للكفاح ومثلها قسيه في العد والترس والجعبة مما أبدي وأدرع كانت له بهية أسماؤها فضة والسعدية ثالثها ذات الفضول تدعى كانت له يوم حنين درعا ومغفر يدعى السبوغ كان له ونحوه منطقة مجملة. So these are the weapons the Prophet ﷺ owned. He had 9 swords. Again, we tend to forget that in the pre-modern world, most people carried weapons. It was a very different world than our world. If you went outside of cities, you were not protected. Governments did not have the types of abilities to monitor that they have today. So there were a lot of Qurrat Turuq, brigands and things like that. And that's partly because there was a lot of famine, there was a lot of hunger. People did not have the types of possibilities that they have in many places today. So martial arts was definitely part of the society. People grew up learning how to fight. The Arabs all knew how to wrestle. It was something kids learned. They learned martial arts. They practiced swords. People think they just went into battle, they picked up their swords. No, these people were people of a martial culture. There was a lot of, we have hadith where they're practicing shooting arrows, they're practicing their swords. They were also doing a type of boxing. The Prophet ﷺ said, if you box, to avoid the face. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Man ta'allama ar-rimayata thumma tarakaha faqad asa Abul Qasim." Whoever learns archery and then abandons it has disobeyed the Prophet ﷺ. So to learn a martial art and then to give it up is not a good thing. It's always better to stay out of something than to get it to dabble. The Prophet ﷺ did not like dabbling. Don't dabble in fasting, don't dabble in Quran recitation, don't dabble in. Do something consistently, even if it's a little bit. That's the real secret of life, is being consistent in practice. Having discipline, just take a little bit. If you want to extend it, once you get firmly established, you can add more. But do something, don't do things every once in a while. Really be consistent in your practice, whatever you do. If you decide to take something up, then complete it. There's a very good book for people that might want to read this book. It's called Mastery by George Leonard, which is about the idea of life being an opportunity to master things, whether it's calligraphy, Quran recitation. The highest mastery is mastery of the self. There's nothing higher than ihkamun nafs. And that's why the greatest, even the Japanese say in their Bushido tradition, the greatest warrior is not the one who conquers 1,000 enemies on the battlefield, but the one who conquers himself. If you study samurai tradition, the samurai, their entire tradition was about self-mastery. And they used that martial tradition as a means to master the self. The same is true during at the height of the Ottoman period. The soldiers were not trained killers. To be in the Yenisheri, which was the crack troops, these were like the special forces of the Ottomans. And the Ottomans invented special forces, by the way, literally. The Yenisheri, you had to be able to write poetry in Arabic, Turkish, and Persian to be one of the Yenisheri. They were hafiz of Quran. They were masters of several different martial arts. When the first American ambassador came to the Ottoman, to Topkapi, to meet with the Ottomans, this is in the 18th century, the caliph went out and shot an arrow about 100 yards and through the legs of a man standing, just to display their. Unfortunately, this was the age of cannons, so that type stuff didn't impress the Americans a whole lot. But the point is that even the caliphs were people that were trained in these things. So I am a big advocate of martial arts, of having our children learn martial arts. All of my children. My two older boys are both went to black belt level, and Shaykh is also doing martial arts. And it's just the two little ones. But I think Muslims should definitely train their children in martial arts. I really believe that. And then archery is a good thing, to learn archery. We have an archery camp. Really good archer, so it's good to find a good archer to train the boys. The Prophet ﷺ said, teach your children archery and al-rimaya was-sibaha wa-rukub al-khayl, and teach them how to ride horses. It's another very good exercise. So the names of, he also named, and again, the naming of possessions. I mentioned that earlier. The Prophet ﷺ named things because things have reality. A sword has a reality. When you name something, it gives it a type of meaning that it doesn't have without the name. Because the sword is there's a personal relationship between you and your things. That's why theft is such a vile crime. Because you're taking something away from somebody that it belongs to. Something belongs to somebody. And milk is an attribute of God. So when you are a malik, there is a divine quality in ownership, which is why protection of property is such an important and fundamental principle in the Islamic religion. So the Prophet ﷺ named his things, and treated them with that respect. When I was in Mauritania, one of the things that struck me is they know the names of everything around them. They know the names of the rocks, they know the names of the trees, they know the names of the types of sand, they know the names of all the different animals, even all the different reptiles. They know all the names. So everything you'd ask them, what's that? They'd tell you. When we had one of the Mauritanians, Shaykh, visited California, he would ask me, what's that? Like he'd point to a tree, and I'd say, I'm not sure. And he'd say, what's that? I don't know. And he'd like, what's that? And I said, we call that a pine tree, What's that? And we call that eucalyptus. So I got some of them right, but after that I went and learned the trees in my area. But he said to me, trees are your neighbors. And he said, if you don't know their names, it's like not knowing your neighbors' names. Which I thought was really interesting. So it's good to know your local flora and fauna. It's a good thing, really, to have that type of knowledge and intimacy with your surroundings. And it's not that hard to do. It's a good thing to do. So then he says that among them is the one he acquired from the booty of Badr. It was known as Dhul Faqar. It's the one that had a split in it. He gave it to Sayyidina Ali to use. Also Al-Qal'i and Al-Battar, these are like the cutting ones. And then Al-Hatf, which is pretty much death. All have come down in the Chronicles. Included in them were Al-Mikhdam and also Al-Qadib, and add to them Al-Adb and Al-Rasub, Ya Labibu. And one of the things that they do, these didactic poets, is they honor the reader by telling you, like, listen up, understand this, take note, because they're doing it to teach you. But then they'll also say things like, Ya Labib, that, oh, intelligent one. And this is in modern educational theory. This is very consistent with what they teach, is like to tell children that they're intelligent, to remind them that they, not to say, Ya Ghabi, Ya Ahmaq, you idiot, you stupid fool. Like he's really saying, listen, you're intelligent, understand this, Ya Labib. It's a beautiful thing when they do that. وَكَانَ عِنْدَهُم مِّنَ الرِّمَاحِ. And then the spears of the Prophet ﷺ, he had 4. And then لِلْكِفَاحِ, the Prophet ﷺ fought to defend himself. So these were weapons of self-defense. And also he had his bows. One of the bows is in the Topkapi of the Prophet ﷺ. It's a beautiful bow and very, very, it's a heavy bow. I don't know how many pounds it is, but you could tell just by looking at it that it would have been very hard to string. And stringing bows was a test of strength. I mean, the Arabs would say that, أَعْطِي الْقَوْسَ بَارِيهَا, give the qaws to the one that can string it, the one that can handle it. So bows, again, archery is a very important art. Imam al-Bukhari was a master archer. And one of his students said, I was with him for 20 years and he practiced archery every morning. Imam al-Bukhari. He said, in the 20 years I was with him, I never saw him miss the bullseye once. Now that, to me, is al-Bukhari. Because that's what he was doing with the hadith. He was hitting the bullseye with the hadith. And that's what archery teaches you, is it teaches you that if you miss the bullseye, don't blame it on the bow, don't blame it on the arrow, blame it on yourself. Because it's about readjusting. You're either too short, too long, too much to the left, too much to the right. So it's learning how to readjust your own mistakes in order to change the situation. And that's something that a lot of people never learn. The Muslim world hasn't learned that in a long time, unfortunately, because there's no self-correction. It's the same mistakes over and over and over and over and over and over again. It's very sad. I mean, I was thinking about, they just had a conference on the Wikipedia. Did you see that? And they were saying how embarrassing the Arabic Wikipedia is. There's hardly any entries. Most of the entries are filled with mistakes. It's sad to see the Muslims that even sports, if you look, even if we had excellence in sports, because the thing about sports, bodies are bodies. Anybody, any people can excel in sports. Some of the most extraordinary athletes on the planet come from the poorest countries. Kenya produces the greatest long-distance runners in the world. Central Africa, some of the greatest soccer players. But those are all excellence. It's about excellence. When you have this idea of itqan in your culture, the idea of really excelling in something. I think the Arabs should win every year in the every 4 years in the horses. I mean, this is their tradition. They gave the world the horses. And those are things that Muslims can do. They can excel. There's so many things we can excel at that we're not excelling at, because there's no love of excellence and there's no understanding of self-correction. that we need to be disciplined in and of ourselves. We can't blame things always on the circumstances outside of ourselves. So that's one of the great blessings of archery, is that it really teaches young people about correcting themselves and learning to do that. And also his shield and quiver. So the Prophet ﷺ had shield and quiver, and he also had beautiful armor. He had fidda and sa'diyah, and then he had that al-fudul, which he used on the day of Hunayn as his chainmail. So he had a dir', which is a chainmail. The Arabs used to use chainmail. The Prophet ﷺ got the two chainmails stuck in his cheek, and when Abu Ubaidah pulled them out, he broke his front teeth, and he had a split, but they actually said it enhanced his smile. That's what the Sahaba said. They said it actually made his teeth more beautiful, even though he broke them pulling out these. And then he also had a helmet, mighfar, that he called sabur. So it's just really amazing that he named all these things. It's something really to think about this idea of naming your possessions. وَنَحْوُهُ مِنْطَقَةٌ مُجَمَّلَةٌ. And he had a beautiful belt that was for his sword that was ornamented. And it's one of the things in fiqh that it's permissible to ornament your mushaf. It's permissible to ornament your sword, things like that. So the Muslims always had very nice swords. Sometimes they wrote calligraphy on them, beautiful things. You can see these in the museums now. وَرَايَةٌ سَوْدَاءُ بِالْعُقَابِ. He also had a black banner known as uqab. تُدْعَى هَدَاكَ اللَّهُ لِلصَّوَابِ. May God guide you to what is right. وَكَانَ أَيْضًا عِنْدُهُ لِوَاءُ أَبْيَضُ قَدْ فَشَتْ بِذَا الْأَنْبَاءُ. So he also possessed a flag that was smaller and white in color. The difference between a raya is a banner. Banners are more rectangular, and the raya is more of a square. So the banners also would often have the pole that holds it, and then it would have something to keep it out. So the Prophet ﷺ had both banner and flag. His black banner was known as uqab, which is like the eagle, and then he had a white flag, which was smaller, that we don't know. So he had a black and white, and as far as we know, there wasn't anything written on them. I haven't seen that. There might be, but I haven't seen that. And now it goes to his thiyab. ثيابه بيان ما له من الثياب ومن أثاث فاستمع خطابي. To clarify now what he possessed of clothing and also his furniture. Please listen attentively to what I have to say. كان لهم من الثياب 12 على الذي نقله أهل السير. He had 12 articles of clothing. And at any one time, he had 12 articles of clothing. So just think about that. And, if you just think about the amount of clothes that people have now. And also, they used to patch their clothes, which people don't do anymore. People just, once something is, they just throw it out. Or, even the Goodwill in America, because we try to give things a Goodwill, they don't take things they used to take anymore because of the whole consumption culture. They literally used to take clothes. Now it's like, So even poor people, it's very strange. Muslims should be doing really something of taking used clothes and sending them to Muslim countries where they really need clothes. It'd just be a really good thing to do. Somebody should do that in here, because there's so much wastage of clothes. And look at some of the rags. You'll see real poor people in the Muslim world, and this is not a poor area. Just go. I've been in Mauritania. You'd be amazed. I've wept. Some of the clothes I've seen on people, just rags, literally threadbare rags on people. So there's so much abundance. But the Prophet ﷺ had 12 clothes. And منها قميصان له شعار ثم كساءان له الدثار. He had 2 shirts that he wore directly against his skin, and that's called a shi'ar. The Arabs call shi'ar is against the actual skin, the bashara, and then dithar is what's the outer garment. So the shi'ar is like what we would call underwear, and then the dithar is the outerwear. وَجُبَّتَانِ وَإِزَارٌ وَالثِّيَابِ. He also had 2 jubba. The jubba is like the bisht, or some type of cloak that you wear. It's more like a cape that you wear. And then he had izar. In Old English, it's called a loincloth. You'll see it in the Bible, in the older translations of the Bible. A loincloth is one piece of garment that you tie around your waist, and it covers at least to the knees. And this is what the Yemenis wear, and also Bengali people, Indonesian, Malay people. That actually is closer to the Sunnah. This type of dress, which is a thawb, is more of a Persian garment. So the Arabs adopted it from the Persians, but the Arabs did not wear these types of clothes. These are very hard to do anything in. This was kind of the aristocratic dress of the Persians that got adopted by the wealthy Arabs. But the Arabs wore clothes that they could ride. You can't ride a horse on one of these things with very comfortable. But the Prophet ﷺ had izar, and then he had also other garments for ثُمَّ الْإِمَامَةُ السَّحَابِ. He had a turban known as the cloud. He called it sahab, like a cloud over the head. And clouds protect your head from the sun, and so it's a nice title for a turban. أعني التي وهبها عليا فلا تكن بعلمها غبية. I mean, of course, the one he gave to Ali. So don't be imbecilic by forgetting such knowledge. So now he's telling you, don't be an imbecile. I know you're a labib, but so don't be an imbecile, right? But my boys were watching an Arabic cartoon, and the guy's like, "Ya Ghabi, Ya Ghabi." It's really, people don't think of the lessons that are being taught in these. Just calling people stupid is. Shaykh's son, Abdullah, who was here, the tall boy, told me that some of the kids call him Ghabi. I said, so what do you say? He said, أقول لهم والله وريك. And then he said, that means I'll show you. ثم قلانس صغار لاطية وهي ثلاث فاغتنم بيانية. He also had some small tight-fitting skull caps. Qalansuwa is the skull cap, and he preferred to wear the turban over the skull cap. The mushrikun used to wear it with a bare head, but he preferred it over a skull cap. So he really introduced that style into the Arab, to wear the hat under the turban. And he had 3 in number, so seize this information. وَالْمُشْطُ مِنْ عَاجٍ لَهُ وَالْمُكْحُلَةِ. And he had an ivory comb that was in his possession, as well as a kuhul case. The mukhula is for kuhul. He did use kuhul, but he used it at night. He did not use it as a mascara. So, some people you see put the kuhul on, thinking like he did it for tajmeel. He didn't do it he did it at nighttime, because the antinomy, which is what it's made of, he would put on the lower eyelid, and it's very cooling for the eye, and it's something that was good for the eye. I don't know the quality out there, but you can get, I mean, Arab women I think still use the kahul, the antinomy. But he did not use it as makeup. It's actually makruh to do that, to wear it like a makeup in your eyes. And then he had a mirror, mir'atuhu al-miqradu was-siwaku lah. He had scissors, which he used to cut. The Malikis say that he did cut his beard, which is why you'll tend to see Moroccans wear shorter, cropped beards. A lot of the Maliki countries, the beards tend to be closer. He did not have a long beard, but he had a full beard. And Ibn Umar, who was very strict on the Sunnah, wore his beard to the qabda, which is about 1 fist length from the chin, like that. So he had a full beard. And then ثم فراش أدم قد حشي بالليف ثم قدحان فاعيا. He also had a leather mattress that was stuffed with palm frods. And also Anas radiallahu anhu relates that Umar once was sitting with the Prophet and they came in. The Prophet had been lying down on his bed. He had a very coarse mattress. And they said he had a skin that was very sensitive. The Prophet ﷺ had very light skin. His skin was not light like a European type of white. لم يكن أمهق, which is the same as abhaq. Bahaq is like almost, it's like Irish or British, English skin, very light skin. But he had more like I asked Murabit al-Hajj about when they likened him to the moon, was it more like the moon when it's at the full moon on the horizon, or when it gets as high? And he said it was closer to the horizon. So it's that kind of very light but not white. It wasn't pasty white. It was like a more wheat, light wheat color. So, and that's why he had some humra also, like a redness in his face. He had some redness. So the Arabs call that ahmar. They call the white people ahmar, and they call the black people aswad. So, but he had his skin used to be affected. So he was lying down. When he got up, they saw the marks on the skin. And Omar began to weep. And the Prophet ﷺ said, "Ma yubkika ya Omar?" What made you cry, Omar? And he said, "Wallahi, I know that you're better than Kisra and Qaisar, than Caesar and Khosrows. But I know how they live, and I see how you live. They have the dunya and you live like this." And the Prophet said, "Ya ibn al-Khattab, وَمَا تَرْضَى أَن تَكُنْ لَهُمَ الدُّنْيَا وَلَنَا الْآخِرَةِ." Aren't you content that they have the dunya and we get the akhirah? And Umar said, وَهُوَ كَذَلِكَ يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ. It's like that. So the Prophet ﷺ lived very, very simple. He could have lived as he pleased, but he chose to live very simple, partly as a mercy to his community. Sulaiman ﷺ was a king prophet. The Prophet ﷺ was a slave prophet. He chose that. He was given the choice. And his community is mostly poor people. So to know that he lived in those conditions makes people that live in those conditions feel better. It's like a tasliyah for his community. Prophet ﷺ did not live in any way, shape, or form in any type of extravagance. And then also he had a large vessel for bathing. فَوَاحِدٌ بِفِضَّةٍ مُضَبَّبُ. One of them had silver plating. The mudabbab, the matli, the ulama permit some type of plating as long as it's not made of silver completely. But to have the mudabbab, you'll get into khilafat about this. But here they have silver plated forks. So it's karahiyah, but it's not prohibited to eat from that. But if it's pure silver, then it becomes a problem. And you can tell obviously by just you'll get a duller sound. If it's pure silver, you get a run, like it rings. If it's dull, but you can still hear a little bit. So you can tell whether something's pure silver or not. And then he had a large vessel for bathing that was made of stone, and then a henna bowl. ومن زجاج قدح ومغتسل لهم من الصفر وقصعة تماد. As well as a glass bowl, he also had a bathing vessel made of the best copper and a giant guest plate as related. So he had a qas'a, it was a guest plate for bringing food out when there was a large number of people. وَالصَّعُ وَالسَّرِيرُ ثُمَّ الْمُدُّ وَخَاتَمٌ مِّن فِضَّةٍ يُعَدُّ. A large measuring cup, a sa'a, a wooden framed bed. So he did have a bed. So he had a bed. Yeah. My wife and I for 20 years have argued about getting a bed, and I've never liked beds. But I told her recently, khalas, you can get a bed. So, because the Prophet ﷺ had a bed. So I slept on the floor since I was like 18, and I just got used to it. So the beds are actually it's a different experience. But when you sleep on the floor just as a norm, no, just something under it, but not like a bed. Yeah. But in Mauritania, everybody sleeps on the floor. They have a khabta, which is like it's just a bamboo type thing. So somebody once one of the wives stuffed the Prophet's, and he got up a little later than usual. He said, "Who did that?" So he didn't like it either. So, but it's just getting used to things. I mean, I like Sayyidina Umar said, don't always be in pleasure, because pleasure doesn't last. He also said, tama'dadu, which means be like Ma'ad. Ma'ad ibn Adnan, so now you know Ma'ad. Ma'ad ibn Adnan was a zahid. He used to walk barefoot. And so Umar said, amshu hufatan, walk barefoot every once in a while. It's just a good thing, because if your feet are so soft, if you ever lose your shoes, you're really in trouble. So the idea is, what I've noted about sitting, because I've sat on the floor since I became Muslim. Like in my house, the furniture's all floor furniture. And what I've noticed is, as I've gotten older, the people I know that don't sit on the floor can't sit on the floor anymore. They just don't have the type flexibility, because sitting like this, you're in natural stretches all the time. So your body is more supple, which gives you see Arab, these old people here, Bedouin, and look at our old people. I mean, our old people, they can barely move once they get a certain age. Whereas here you see people, they're much more vibrant at later, and a lot of it they're losing it now. I mean, the Arabs are just completely, especially on the peninsula. I mean, places like Syria and the villages, or Egypt, they're still moving and doing all those things. But here, people don't, I think 35% of the population has type 2 diabetes. Because there's no exercise. They eat all this sugar, they drink the soda pop, they drink the tea, and they don't move. And I was with a friend of mine who's a Saudi who met with one of the top, he's a very wealthy Saudi, and he wanted to donate for diabetes research. He has diabetes, but he also is concerned about the people here. And is a professor of endocrinology in San Francisco, and he asked him, what's like the latest, most cutting edge type 2 therapy? And he said to him, if I told you, you're going to shake your head. And he said, let's hear it. And he said, it's basically walking 10,000 steps a day. He said that is the best thing that you can do for type 2 diabetes. Just walk 10,000 steps a day. And he said he gives all his patients pedometers and makes them do it every day. And he said it regulates the body. He said even the diet, the modifications don't have to be as extreme as they are in normal cases. Because a lot of it is just people aren't, you know, the thing about your body is designed to burn certain, you have a base metabolic rate. It's designed to burn a certain amount of calories every day. But your body's also designed to move. You know, Thoreau used to walk 4 hours a day. Henry David Thoreau. He wrote a beautiful essay called Walking. It's really worth reading. But he walked 4 hours a day, and he said these legs were not built for sitting around every day. You know, just if you look at the legs, you know, legs are built, and if you look at the way your body's been designed, it's just an amazing thing that God's given us, these bodies. I mean, I was thinking this morning, because I was trying to get the wrapper off the soap, and I was just thinking, what a blessing the fingernails are. Because if you didn't have fingernails, you couldn't do stuff like that. You know, you'd be sitting there all day trying to get that stupid wrapper off the soap. But Allah gave you fingernails to do things. It's just, you know, the body is so beautifully designed. And so to honor the body, you know, to take care of the body, the Prophet ﷺ exercised. They said that he died and he had no stomach. He did not have a stomach. Then they mentioned that. And he said, "Al-bitnatu tudhib al-fitna." You know, filling the stomach will make you dull-minded. You know, overeating. So you need a certain amount of calories. I mean, the women are designed to have more weight than men. So it's not, you don't want these modern, you know, Jane Fonda type people that, you know, exercise to where they lose all their body fat and things. It's unhealthy for women to do that. But you know, it's important just to remember that the body has a right. You know, walking, doing those things, it's good for the body. You should try to do something every day. You know, for your health, and also just because this is your, you know, this is the faras. I mean, this is the vehicle that Allah has given you to take you on this journey to Allah. It's the body. It's a vehicle. And the you know, the Qawm say it's like the nafs is like it's like a horse, and the ruh is the rider, you know, and the reins is the sharia, the constraints that Allah has put on you. But if you don't treat the horse well, you can't make the journey. You can either burn yourself out too much, or you get so lazy that you don't have the ability to make the journey. It's one way or the other, because some people go to that extreme. Shaykh Abdullah bin Bayya told me, you know, sleep. Don't abuse your body, you know, sleep. And he said that he really harmed his health, because for years he did not sleep. He slept very little. But he regretted that later. So it's important, you know, to treat, inna li jasadika alayka haqqa. Your body has a right over you. It's a right. So you can punish your body. If you eat too much, you're oppressing your body. It's dhulm for the body. You know, I mean, you can have these things every once in a while, but if you're eating like desserts every day, you know, really, you're really not doing, I mean, it's nafs. That's all it is. It's pure nafs, because it's good, but you're not thinking about the ma'alat. That's all. You're not thinking about long term. So, you know, enjoy things within limitations. But the Prophet ﷺ was somebody that did not indulge himself in that way. He loved hais. It was one of his favorite foods. There's one place that I go to in London. There's a lady there. She's a beautiful Yemeni lady. And she makes, I mean, beautiful. I've never seen her because she wears niqab, but she's beautiful spiritually. You know, I've never seen her face. So I didn't want you to get the wrong idea there. But she makes hais, and the Prophet loved hais. It's where you take dates, you take out the seeds, and you turn it into a paste, and then you put like simon in it, like a butter type, and cook it And then she serves it. It's amazing. And the Prophet, it was his favorite food. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So I only have it at her house, but I always, it's some people licking their lips right now. But it's a beautiful, so the Prophet had his dessert. He liked hais, and it's a real dessert. It's a rich dessert. But it wasn't something that he had all the time. And Umar radiallahu anhu, when they brought him the Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad. What's that called? Faluda? Huh? Yeah, faluda. When they brought him the faluda, which is like a sweet, it's kind of like what the baklava type things now. They brought him from Persia. And when he saw it, they said, oh, they really like this in Persia. And Omar looked at it and he said, does everybody eat it? He said, oh, no, this is just for the rich people. He said, bring it to me when everybody eats it and I'll try it. I mean, and if that doesn't tell you about Sayyidina Umar, nothing will. Nothing will. SubhanAllah. So he also had a glass bowl, a bathing vessel made of best copper. He had a measuring cup, sa'a, which you can buy. I would recommend if you want to pay your zakat with the sa'a, you can buy the sa'a here. They have mud and sa'a. The sa'a is the big one, the mud is the smaller one. And these are accurate in the marketplace if you get them here. Just ask them. You can see them. They're little metal cups that they sell. And then he had a wooden frame bed, a small measuring cup. He had a ring of silver that he counted amongst his possessions. The ring, there's difference of opinion. In some riwayah, he wore it on his left, and some on the right. He might have switched it, but most of the scholars that I've seen wear it on the right. They either wear it on this finger or the small finger. Shaykh Abdullah al-Qadi wears it on the small finger. The Prophet ﷺ also tended to wear the fis or the fas, which is the stone. It was from aqiq, which is a very beautiful type of stone that you can get here also. If you ask them for agig, they'll know it. But he wore it on the inside, not on the outside. So he tended to wear the stone on the inside. He also, when he went to the gha'it, if he went to the restroom, which then obviously it was outside, but he would hold his, because it said Allah Rasul Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Muhammad Rasulullah, so he would hold it, close it, which is, the ulama say it's permissible for the women that have like necklaces and things, as long as it's under. You shouldn't have it exposed, but you put it under the shirt or whatever you're wearing it on. So I wouldn't, if you have the whole Quran, some people carry the whole Quran, I definitely wouldn't go into a restroom or something with the mushaf. I mean, obviously if you're in an airport or something like that and you've got your bag, people, so the وكان قد أهدره خفين أصحمة أيضا بدون مانع. So 2 leather socks were also given to him by Ashama, who is the Negus, Nagashi, without any doubt. وكان ثوبان له للجمعة غير ثياب لبسه المرتفعة. He also had 2 special garments for Friday prayer, and I really want to emphasize this for the men. It really bothers me every time I go to Jum'ah to see people wearing t-shirts, wearing jeans. I mean, in the United States, and England I'm sure is the same, but it really bothers me personally because, I came out of the Christian tradition, and in Christianity, you had what was called your Sunday best. It was like you had a special suit or dress that you wore for going to church. And the Prophet ﷺ had special Jum'ah clothes that he wore. He took a bath. He put on scent. Jum'ah should be a big day. It's not just you go to Jum'ah and you wear your t-shirt with, sometimes you even see them with designs and things on them, or Corolla or something like that. I mean, it's really, I find it just the degradation, human degradation of modern man, with no understanding of who he is or who she is, that you're actually vicegerents of God on earth. And Jummah, at least give that day its due and wear nice clothes to Jummah. I just find it really disgraceful personally, because I know, wallahi, if they went to do a job interview, they wouldn't dress like that. And that's what Jummah is. You're going, it's an interview with God, to see whether you're acceptable or not. So if that's all you give God, then don't expect God to give you anything back. Wallahi, ana inda dhanni abdi bi. I am in the opinion of my servant of me. And if that's what you think about God, that you're going to wear your t-shirt and your jeans to God's house on Friday, then, it's very sad. And I lived in Mauritania with Bedouin. Wallahi, never would any of those people go to the masjid, and they prayed 5 times a day in their sirwal, and they always put on their robe, to go to the masjid. خُذُوا زِينَتُكُمْ عِنْدَ كُلِّ masjid. Take your zina, your ornaments to every masjid. That's what the Quran says. خُذُوا فِعْل أمر. Take your zina to every masjid. So the Prophet ﷺ had special garments for Friday prayer that were not included among the precious clothes he regularly wore. So you should have a Friday clothes that you set aside and just wear them for Jummah. That's the sunnah. Take your bath, put on your perfume if you're for the men, and really go looking nice. And if people ask you at work why you dressed up, then tell them, because this is our Sunday. This is the day that we go in congregation to worship together. وكان منديل له ليمسح به على الوجه المنير الأصبح. He also had a handkerchief that he used to wipe his beautiful and radiant countenance with. So he carried a handkerchief. صلى عليه ربنا وسلم وآله وصحبه وكرمه. So that is, alhamdulillah. So this next section is actually very extraordinary. And so, alhamdulillah, I'll try to... It's just not... How many people memorized the names? MashaAllah. How many men? Ma'in, shahin, aqin, kammin, kalaghfamin, kakhmin, amin, ma'in. So, Sayyidina Muhammad, Abdullah, Shayba, Hashim, Abdul Manaf, Qusay, where were we? Kalaghfamin, Ka'ab, Lu'ay, Kalagh, Ghalib, Fihr, Malik, Nadir, Kakhmin, Kinana, Khuzaima, Mudrika, Amin, Ilyas, Modar, Nizar, Ma'ad, Adnan. Allahu Akbar. جزاكم الله خيرا.